take that flight. That thought has stayed with me ever since. Quiet, persistent, like a shadow that never quite leaves. It's been 2 years now, and not a single day has passed where I haven't replayed that decision in my head. Because if I had listened to that small, nagging voice in my gut, if I had just stayed one more night in Denver, I would never have met him. And I would never have spent those hours wondering if I was going to make it home alive. It was late November, the kind of cold that settles into your bones and makes everything feel slower, heavier. I had been in Colorado for a work conference. Long days, forced conversations, bad coffee. By the time it ended, I was completely drained. All I wanted was to go home, crawl into my own bed, and forget the week ever happened. But travel doesn't always cooperate. My original flight had been canceled due to weather. No apology beyond a generic announcement. No real options either. The airline rebooked me automatically on a red-eye flight, Denver to Chicago, then a connection to LaGuardia. I remember staring at the email for a long time before accepting it. Something about it felt off. I told myself I was just tired. Denver International Airport at 11:30 p.m. feels like a completely different place. The crowds are gone. The noise fades into a low, distant hum. Most of the shops are closed, their metal shutters pulled down like they're hiding something. Even the lighting feels dimmer, colder. My footsteps echoed as I walked to my gate, louder than they should have been. It made me feel exposed, like I didn't belong there at that hour. There were only a handful of people waiting. I found a seat, one of those stiff plastic chairs, and dropped my bag beside me. My shoulders ached. My eyes burned. I pulled out my phone, trying to distract myself. That's when I noticed him. He was sitting directly across from me, maybe 40 feet away. Mid-50s, neatly dressed, nothing out of place. A leather carry-on rested against his leg. He looked like any other business traveler, forgettable in every possible way. He didn't look at me. He was just scrolling on his phone, completely still. I didn't think anything of it. We boarded around midnight. The plane was barely a third full, one of those quiet, heavy red-eye flights where people avoid eye contact and settle in quickly. I had a window seat toward the back. I remember feeling relieved. Less noise, less movement. I wanted to sleep. That's all. Then he sat down, aisle seat, same row, one seat between us. He gave a small, polite smile, the kind strangers exchange without meaning anything. I nodded back, already putting my earbuds in, already trying to shut the world out. The plane took off into the dark. For the first hour, everything was normal. I drifted in and out of sleep the way you do on planes. My head would fall forward, then jerk back up. The cabin lights were dimmed. Most passengers were quiet, wrapped in blankets, hidden behind eye masks. It felt safe, routine. Then I woke up, and he was watching me, not glancing, not accidentally looking in my direction. Watching. His head was slightly turned, his eyes fixed on me in a way that felt too still, too intentional, like he had been doing it for a while. For a second, neither of us moved. Then slowly, he turned back toward the front of the plane, like nothing had happened. I told myself I imagined it, that I was half asleep, disoriented. Your brain plays tricks on you when you're exhausted. I adjusted in my seat, put my earbuds back in, tried to ignore the unease creeping into my chest. 20 minutes later, I shifted again. And without meaning to, I looked over. He was doing it again. This time, there was no confusion, no doubt. He was staring at me. My stomach dropped instantly. I looked away, grabbed my phone, pretended to scroll. My heart was beating faster than it should have been. I tried to stay rational. He's just weird. People act strange on flights. He's probably tired too. But underneath all that logic, there was something else, something quieter, something colder. A feeling that said very clearly, this is not right. I needed to move. I unbuckled my seatbelt and stood up, heading toward the back of the plane. Partly because I needed the restroom, mostly because I needed space, to breathe, to think. When I came back, he was gone. For a split second, I felt relief. Then I saw him, one row behind mine, aisle seat, sitting perfectly still. I froze in the aisle. There were empty seats everywhere, entire rows unused. But he had moved, not randomly, not casually, closer, directly behind me. His bag was already in the overhead compartment above his new seat, like he had planned it, like he had been waiting. I didn't go back to my seat. Instead, I walked straight to the back galley where a flight attendant stood holding a cup of coffee. She looked tired but alert. I kept my voice low, steady. I told her everything, that the man had been staring at me, that he had changed seats, that I was alone, that I didn't feel safe going back. She didn't dismiss me. She didn't smile it off or tell me I was overthinking. She listened, carefully. Then she asked me to point him out. I did. She walked past him casually, glanced once, then came back, and without hesitation she said, "I'm gonna move you." She brought me to a seat near the front of the plane, close to where the crew stayed. Another flight attendant sat nearby, occasionally walking the aisle. I felt safer, but not calm, not even close. I didn't sleep for the rest of the flight. Every sound felt louder, every movement sharper. My heartbeat refused to slow down. I kept replaying everything in my head. The staring, the seat change, the silence. We landed in Chicago just before 5 a.m. The moment the plane stopped, I was up, grabbing my bag, moving quickly toward the exit. I didn't wait. I didn't look back. Not until I was inside the terminal. Bright lights, people everywhere, noise, normal. I finally turned around, and there he was, walking through the gate. Same gray jacket, same leather bag, looking down at his phone like nothing had ever happened, like he had never seen me. I moved into the crowd immediately, found a busy seating area near a coffee stand, sat with my back against the wall so I could see everything. I waited, watched. He never appeared again. Before I left the plane, the flight attendant had leaned in close to me. Her voice was quiet, serious. "You did the right thing," she said. Then she added something I've never forgotten. "Trust that feeling." Every time. She didn't say I was overreacting. She didn't say it was nothing. She said, "every time." And I've thought about that a lot, about what she meant, about how many times she's seen something like that before, about what people do when they think no one is paying attention. I don't take red-eye flights anymore, and I never sit near the back. Because the most dangerous part of traveling alone isn't turbulence. It isn't getting lost. It isn't even the destination. It's the moment when something feels wrong. And you have to decide whether to ignore it or listen. I listened, and I made it home. We weren't supposed to stop in that town. If everything had gone according to plan, we would have driven straight past it. Just another name on a map we never noticed. But plans don't mean much when you're hours into a road trip, the sun is going down, and your GPS starts glitching out in the middle of nowhere. That's how we ended up in Redfield. And if I'm being honest, I still think about that place more than I should, because nothing that happened there was normal. It started as a simple trip. My friend Carl had been asking me for months to do a cross-country drive with him. No hotels booked, no strict schedule, just the two of us, a cooler in the back seat, and a vague route heading south. Chicago to Louisiana with a bunch of small stops along the way. I kept saying no. Work, responsibilities, excuses. But Carl had a way of wearing you down. Eventually, sometime in February, I gave in, and for the first couple of days, it was perfect. We drove through quiet towns and long stretches of open road. We stopped at diners where the coffee came in heavy ceramic mugs and the food tasted homemade. We laughed about stupid things, told old stories, and for a while it felt like we were back in our early 20s again. No pressure, no stress, just movement. I remember thinking, this is exactly what I needed. We hit Arkansas around sunset on the third day. That's when things started to shift. It wasn't anything obvious at first, just small things. The kind you don't notice unless you're really paying attention. The sky felt darker than it should have been. The road stretched out too empty. Our GPS started lagging, recalculating routes, freezing, then going silent altogether. Carl checked his phone. 1 bar, he said. Mine had none. We missed a turn somewhere. Neither of us realized it until we were already too far off course. The road had narrowed into a 2-lane stretch with nothing but flat farmland on either side. No streetlights, no houses. Just a dying orange glow on the horizon as the sun disappeared. That's when we saw the sign, Redfield. Population small enough that it barely registered. We needed gas anyway, so we turned in. The town was quiet, not peaceful quiet, not the kind you'd expect from a rural place at night. This was different. It felt paused, like everything had stopped a moment too early. There were only a few buildings, maybe 4 or 5 you could call commercial. A laundromat with flickering lights, a diner with a dim glow in the window, and a gas station sitting at the edge of town under a single buzzing overhead light. We pulled in. Inside, the air smelled stale. There was one man behind the counter. Older, maybe around 60, weathered face, the kind of expression that doesn't change much. He didn't greet us, didn't smile, he just watched. Carl grabbed some snacks. I picked up a couple of drinks and brought them to the counter. I paid in cash. The man counted the change slowly, too slowly. Then, without looking up, he said, "You boys passing through?" Something about the way he said it made my chest tighten. "Yeah," I answered, "just passing through." He nodded once. Then he looked up at me, and his eyes were sharp, focused in a way that didn't match his calm voice. "Don't stop again after this," he said. "Just keep driving." Carl let out a small laugh, the nervous kind. I frowned. "What do you mean?" But the man didn't answer. He turned away, started rearranging items on a shelf like the conversation was over, like he had already said everything he needed to say. Back in the car, Carl brushed it off. "Small town guy," he said, "probably just doesn't like outsiders." I nodded. Out loud, I agreed. But inside, something felt wrong, not like a warning, more like an instruction. We should have left right then. We didn't. 2 blocks up, the diner still had its lights on. Carl said he was hungry. I hesitated, just for a second. Then I said, "Fine." The diner was nearly empty. A woman in her 40s stood behind the counter, wiping down tables. Her movements were slow, mechanical, like she was distracted or tired or something else. There were 2 men sitting at the far end of the counter. They weren't eating. They weren't talking. They were just sitting, with coffee cups in front of them. When we walked in, both of them looked up at the same time, and they didn't look away. We took a booth near the door. The woman came over and handed us menus. Her hands were shaking slightly. I noticed it immediately. I told myself she was cold or overworked or anything that made sense. We ordered food. Carl got up to use the restroom while we waited. And that's when it happened. One of the men at the counter turned, not just a glance. He turned his whole body on the stool and looked directly at me. His expression was blank, completely unreadable. I gave a small nod, the polite kind. He didn't respond. He just kept staring for a few seconds longer than normal, then turned back around. Carl came back fast, too fast. His face looked pale. He slid into the booth and leaned toward me. "There's someone outside," he whispered. I frowned. "What?" "By the bathroom window," he said. "Just standing there." My stomach dropped. "Doing what?" "Nothing," Carl said, "just standing, looking in." We didn't wait for the food, didn't question it, didn't try to rationalize it. We paid in cash and left. Outside, the street was still empty. Our car was right where we left it, but something was wrong. The back tire. Flat. Completely flat. Carl crouched down to look at it, then looked up at me. And I'll never forget that expression because I had known him for 15 years. And I had never seen him look like that before. "There's a cut," he said quietly. "Not a puncture, not a slow leak, a clean, deliberate slice along the sidewall." We didn't speak after that. We just moved. Fast. We grabbed the spare tire and started changing it right there in the dark. Every second felt too long. Every sound made me turn my head. The town was still. Too still. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone, that something was watching us, getting closer. I kept scanning the street, the gaps between buildings, the shadows, anything. Nothing moved. But the feeling didn't go away. It took us 18 minutes. I know because I kept checking my phone. No signal, but the clock still worked. When we finished, we got in the car and locked the doors immediately. Carl started driving. We didn't say a word, not for at least 20 minutes. When we finally hit a main road and saw lights from a larger town ahead, the tension broke. Just a little. Carl pulled into a big gas station. Bright lights, people everywhere, noise, movement. Normal. We parked, sat there, breathing. Later we tried to explain it, tried to make sense of everything. A flat tire happens, a strange guy at a gas station happens. People stare. It's not illegal, but none of it felt random. Not really. Because there's one thing I haven't been able to forget. When we first left the gas station in Redfield, right after the old man told us to keep driving, I glanced in the passenger side mirror, just out of habit. There was a truck parked across the road, dark, no lights. I didn't think anything of it. But after we left the diner, that same truck was 1 block closer. We never saw it move. We never saw anyone inside, but it had moved closer. And I don't know what would have happened if we had stayed there longer. Another 10 minutes, another 20. I don't know what that town was, or what those people wanted, or if we were just unlucky enough to show up at the wrong time. But I do know this. The man at the gas station told us to keep driving, and we didn't listen. Not right away. And that's the part that stays with me, because sometimes the warning is clear, simple, direct, and the only mistake you can make is thinking you have time to ignore it. I thought I needed silence, not just a break from work or a weekend off, but real silence. The kind where your phone doesn't buzz, your inbox doesn't fill up, and there's nothing around you except trees, water, and your own thoughts. At least that's what my doctor said. After months of working 60-hour weeks, running on caffeine and stress, he told me calmly but firmly that I needed to unplug. No screens, no calls, no distractions, just quiet. So I listened. And that's how I ended up renting a cabin in northern Minnesota. A friend of mine, Marcus, had stayed there the summer before. He wouldn't stop talking about it. Said it was peaceful, remote, the kind of place where you wake up to birds instead of alarms. He sent me the link. I booked it for 10 days. No hesitation. The drive up was long, but uneventful. As the roads narrowed and the trees grew thicker, my phone signal slowly disappeared. By the time I turned onto the gravel road leading to the cabin, I had nothing. No bars, no connection. Just me. The cabin was exactly what I needed. Old wood, slightly worn but sturdy, a stone fireplace in the corner, a small port to perfectly still lake, Mirror Lake they called it, and it lived up to the name. In the mornings, the water looked like glass. No ripples, no movement, just a reflection of the sky so clear it felt unreal. I unpacked, set my things down, and for the first time in months, I relaxed. The first 4 days were perfect. I woke up early, made coffee, and sat on the dock watching the lake slowly wake up with the sun. I spent my afternoons fishing, reading, or just doing nothing. At night, I lit a fire and let the silence settle in. No notifications, no pressure, just stillness. There was another cabin across the lake, about 300 yards away, barely visible through the trees. It stayed dark every night. I assumed no one had rented it. On the fifth night, a light turned on. I noticed it from the porch, a faint yellow glow cutting through the darkness on the other side of the lake. I didn't think much of it. If anything, it was comforting, knowing someone else was out there, even at a distance, someone human. The next morning, I saw him. I was standing on the dock, coffee in hand, when I noticed a figure on the opposite shore, a man, standing perfectly still at the edge of the water. It didn't feel strange at first, just another person enjoying the quiet. I raised my hand in a small wave, a normal, instinctive gesture. He didn't wave back, didn't move at all. I frowned slightly, then shrugged it off. Maybe he didn't see me, maybe he was lost in thought. I went back inside and started my day. That evening, I saw him again. Same spot, same posture, but this time, something felt different. The light was fading, and I couldn't see his face clearly. But I was almost certain he was facing my cabin, not the lake, not the trees. Me. A chill ran up my arms. I stood there longer than I should have, staring back across the water, waiting for him to move. He didn't. Eventually, I went inside and locked the door. I told myself I was being paranoid, that isolation messes with your head, that everything had a reasonable explanation. The next morning proved me wrong. There was something on my porch, a fish, cleaned, gutted, carefully laid out right in front of the door. I stopped in my tracks. My first thought wasn't confusion, it was fear, because I hadn't heard anything. Not a footstep, not a sound. Someone had walked up to that cabin in the middle of the night while I was sleeping and left something for me to find. I looked around. The woods were still. The lake was silent. Nothing moved. I told myself it was a gesture, a neighbor being friendly, a strange, rural kind of kindness. But it didn't feel like kindness. It felt deliberate. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to every creak of the wood. Every shift of the wind against the walls sounded louder than it should have. Time moved slowly, painfully slowly. Around 2 a.m., I heard something. Not inside, outside, near the tree line. It wasn't footsteps. Not exactly. It was slower, a dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across leaves and dirt. I held my breath, listened. It lasted maybe 30 seconds, then stopped. Silence again. I stayed frozen for a long time before finally getting up. Slowly, carefully. I moved to the window and looked out. Nothing. Just darkness, trees, stillness. But I knew I hadn't imagined it. The next morning, I found the marks, deep impressions in the mud along the side of the cabin. Not footprints, not tire tracks, something else. They started near the tree line and led toward the cabin. Then stopped. Not turned away, not faded out, stopped, like whatever made them had simply disappeared. That was enough. I didn't try to explain it anymore, didn't try to rationalize it, didn't care what it could have been. I grabbed my phone and walked to the end of the driveway where I could barely get a signal. Called the rental company. "What about the cabin across the lake?" I asked. There was a pause. Then the woman on the line said, "It's not rented." My stomach dropped. It hasn't been rented in over a month. I didn't say anything after that. I just hung up. I packed everything in under 20 minutes. Didn't clean, didn't check anything twice. Just threw my bags in the truck and left. I didn't look back. Not until I reached the main road. 2 lanes, paved, a clear path back to civilization. I pulled over for a second, just to breathe, just to calm down. And then, without thinking, I checked the rearview mirror. Through the trees, barely visible in the distance, I could see the cabin. And on the dock, my dock, there was someone standing there, perfectly still, facing the road, watching me leave. I didn't stop. I didn't question it. I just drove. I never went back. Later, I looked the place up online, found an old forum post from someone who had stayed there years before. They didn't go into detail, just one line. "Beautiful place, but something feels off, wouldn't return." That was it, and honestly, they didn't need to say anything else, because if you've ever felt it, that quiet, heavy feeling in your chest, the one that doesn't scream, doesn't panic, just tells you, calmly and clearly, something here knows you're here. Then you already understand. I should have left sooner. Now I don't wait for proof. I don't wait for explanations. If something feels wrong, I go. Every time.